Washington, file number 22222.
Today is the date and time set for a review hearing, permanency planning hearing, and a trial on the petition for termination of the parental rights of Ms. Samantha Stout. And the names of our participants:
Lee Heights, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Ms. Tasha Thomas, counsel for the department.
Leslie Conrad, foster care worker, Fostering Solutions.
Mariana Ariel Berger here on behalf of Mother Samantha Stout.
Ms. Stout?
Samantha Stout.
Thank you. I understand you have a chance to confer with your client ahead of time, Ms. Berger?
I did, Your Honor.
All right, for our purposes today, given that there's a request to have the court evaluate termination based on whether or not there's been services or progress made on services, it would be my usual methodology to combine the review with the termination proofs. Any objections or comments on that?
No, Your Honor, I believe that's appropriate.
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. Ms. Heiss, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I was able to visit with this child in person. This family, there's 7 children and 6 different moms. And I've met them all throughout representation in this case. And this is the youngest boy of Mr. Young, and he is placed with the oldest children's mom. So the very first person who made a family with Mr. Young had 2 boys. And then from there on, each of Credence's half siblings have a different mom. So he has known them over time, many of them, but right now he's placed with his oldest 2 half brothers. And these 2 young men are in high school, and they golf, and they are in all kinds of sports, and they play video games, and so when I visit Credence, those 2 folks are around many times. Sometimes Credence has friends over, and so he has friends in the neighborhood, and they play at each other's house. And a very normal childhood sounds coming from their play. And Credence is very proud that he gets a perfect attendance award nearly every quarter or semester, whichever they call it in elementary school. He wants to stay in this placement. When I visited last, he had a new scooter. And I said, well, a new scooter, you know, it's not Easter, it's not Christmas, it's not his birthday. What is this new scooter? And she said, oh, he wanted it, and I ordered on Amazon, and it came, and he gets to have it. So very attentive to Credence's needs. He's happy, he's lighthearted in this placement. He has a little bit of a speech delay, so he's a little bit hard to understand, but to watch him say something to me and then look to his caregiver to interpret it for me so that he can communicate is interesting to watch. He looks to his caregiver as a support. He wanted to go outside and play on the scooter instead of talking to me. And when his caregiver said, no, you have to wait a minute, that was final. And he behaved for her very well. Well, he rode the scooter inside then, but anyway, a very child-centered home, including the big brothers who take on, half big brothers, who take on a real paternal role, although they're goofy with them too. And you know, those video games, the little guy, Credence, really loves to be included in any of that kind of stuff. So his relationship with his mother has been that this caregiver, the mother of his oldest 2 half siblings, she allows, what she says is she allows the Credence's mother to call when she wants to, when she can. There was a in-person visit set up, but basically mother takes care of herself, and this caregiver takes care of the child and makes the child available for visits when possible. During this case, though, you'll remember that mother has even borrowed money from this case caregiver, showing to me that there's a good relationship, and this caregiver cares about the entire family, but also that mom is not prepared to meet Credence's needs. Father then also video chats. He has moved placements in his incarceration, so Credence hasn't had that access now for just a little bit, but he wants to stay in this placement. This is stable for him. When we found him in the beginning of the case, he had lived with mom, then he had lived with dad. Then we placed him back with mom, and that didn't work out. So all of his needs are met in this placement. His caregiver works, I believe, full-time and still manages all of his fundraisers for school and all the details he has. She does have funding to take care of him, and they live in a house. I don't know if they own it or they rent, but the entire house is theirs. He has outside and sidewalks. So I would ask you to consider that the relationship, the bond between him and his mother has diminished to the point where it would take an unreasonable amount of time to build that bond back up, considering mom isn't accepting services. So this child needs permanence. He needs to know that his family isn't going to change, and that his stability, he has the ability to rely on this family and to really bond with them and know that he isn't going to be moved again. Let me double check. Okay. So I would ask you to consider that termination today. When you see the proofs, you'll see that the statutory basis will be met, and also that the best interest will be met. Thank you.
Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Honors. Ms. Conrad, can you please be sworn into the Bible report?
Conrad, not after a witness stand.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning, Ms. Conrad. Would you prefer Ms. Conrad or Leslie?
Leslie's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Leslie, so you are the foster care worker that's been on this case since 2022?
Yes, November 2022.
And you provided a court report for today's hearing.
Yes.
And originally we were supposed to have this hearing, I believe, on March 22nd. So there's been a little bit of a time gap between the time you provided this court report and drafted it. Are there any updates or modifications that need to be made to it?
There has been no verifications of any engagement in services or employment or housing since that date. And there has been 1 face-to-face visit between the child and mom since that date.
So in your report, I believe you indicate there were 2 visits since last review period, 1 in person, a call, and then this one.
Correct.
And generally speaking, since the last review period, do you believe that there's been some, let me strike that. How would you describe mom's level of compliance with and benefit from her case service plan during this review period?
The same as it's been throughout the duration of the case, which is no verification of engagement in any services, no verification of stable housing, no verification of employment, and sporadic and inconsistent contact with and visitation with the child.
Do you believe that there's been any changes circumstances that would warrant review or reconsideration of the goal for this child at this time?
No.
And what would be the risk of harm to the child if the court were to return the child to mother today?
So the barriers that existed at the time of the court's removal of the child in November of 2022 continue to exist. There is housing instability, no financial resources, no ability to meet basic needs, and then no psychological evaluation, no individual counseling, no parenting education has taken place, no budgeting education or income management has taken place. So all of the services that were required at the outset of the case none of them have been engaged in completed and no benefit has been shown.
You had the opportunity to observe Ms. Stout's interactions with the child.
I have rarely, but I did in March of 2024. There was a face-to-face that I supervised. Yes. And
How
then
would you-
previous to that, just twice previous to that since November of 2022.
3 times total. And how would you describe what you saw in those interactions?
So there are no concerns regarding abusive behaviors from Ms. Stout or neglectful behaviors from Ms. Stout when she is directly with the child during visitations. There are observable concerns regarding a bond between the child and her. In March of 2024, I drove mother to the child's school to pick him up after school and then take him to our office for a visit. And he came into the office and ran into the office and ran to me and hugged me and did not do the same with mom. He talks with her easily. He has zero fear involved with seeing mom, but when they converse at this last visit in March, the conversation that mom had with him in the office was primarily about her friend that she's been living with and what she's been doing. And there wasn't much back and forth as far as how he was doing and what his life was about. She was talking to him about his schooling, and he was telling her about his perfect attendance award, and she didn't know who the principal was that he got to have lunch with at his elementary school. She had to ask him if it was a man or a woman and what the name was. And that was a school he attended prior to foster care. So there's just some pretty significant gaps in the parent-child bond. There is no fear and there is no abuse observed.
To go to the petition for termination, so that this might include time periods that are recapped outside of this review period. To date, have you been able to observe mom's current housing?
I have not observed the inside of the housing, no, just the outside. I picked her up and dropped her off at the housing she reports is where she's staying. The last time I dropped her off in March of 2024. At the housing she states she has been given access to. As I was leaving, I was in the driveway waiting to pull out onto the road and watched, and she entered the home through a window, like she opened a window and crawled in. So I don't know if that means that she does have access to the home or she doesn't. I'm not sure.
And you have not been provided like a lease or any rental agreement or anything like that?
No.
And as relates to the psychological evaluation in your report earlier, you indicated that she's still not completed one.
Correct.
And was that ever scheduled for her?
Yes, there were 2 scheduled by me with Dr. Richard Haugen, one in July of 2023, and which she canceled like the day of. So she did cancel with advance notice, although it was minimal. So Dr. Haugen rescheduled for August of 2023, and she did not appear for that one. And after 2 failures to appear, he does not reschedule a 3rd.
And you say that she has not engaged in any mental health services for any referrals made for that?
So yes, so in September of 2023, yes, referrals have been made throughout the case. You know, back in after initial disposition took place in February of 2023, a referral was made and she was provided information in March 2023 and again in May 2023 for an approved service with Brene Moore for virtual counseling because she was living between Toledo sometimes and Adrian sometimes. That has never been engaged in. And then in September of 2023, Ms. Stout went to an inpatient treatment center for substance abuse. And she was exited from the program after 4 days, but she was given a referral to follow up with local CMH. She did attend a case management follow-up meeting, but did not attend her follow-up psychiatric appointment at CMH. They closed her case eventually, and she did attempt, she reports more recently, to re-engage in CMH services, and reports that they told her she does not qualify any longer. So she provided me her Medicaid information. I did some searches for local providers that would accept her Medicaid and referred her to an agency. Just again, now in March, she was given the name of an agency that will accept her insurance, but she had had options for Renee Moore since the beginning of the case, and her information was given to her multiple times. CMH was an option. She did not follow through. They closed her case. We have just given her information again for Mindful Hearts, another agency that accepts her insurance. I do not have any verification that she has contacted them or started services.
Is there any ongoing concern about substance use or abuse?
Ms. Stout states no, and has never engaged in a drug screen or alcohol screen. Those have not been required of her through her case service plan. But she did, again, she voluntarily entered a substance abuse inpatient treatment center for detox. She reported to me for detox in September of 2023, indicating that she did in fact have a substance abuse issue. She was exited by the program for rules violations 4 days after admittance, and has not engaged in any follow-up substance abuse services since then.
As it relates to the child's best interest factors, how old is this child?
He is 6.
And would you say that he has a need, a particular need for permanency and stability and finality?
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Heiss, in her report, has sort of outlined the instability that this youth has experienced early on in his life, of living with dad, brief moment with mom, and then removed, to this caregiver's home. Have you been able to recognize any changes in his behaviors from the time he was placed in foster care to today?
He has never demonstrated any significant emotional or behavioral concerns. So he has not required tremendous stabilization in either emotional stability or behavioral stability. However, what I have been able to observe is the consistent deepening and strengthening of the bond with his current caregiver over the last 16, 17 months. He is very well adjusted. He is emotionally stable. He displays a range of emotions and displays accurate and age-appropriate emotions for the situation. He is very bonded to his brothers with whom he lives. And over time, he has just developed this ease about him that is very focused on having a sense of humor, lightheartedness. He loves to laugh, and he and his caregiver do that together. They have inside jokes that I'm not familiar with when I'm there, but that they laugh about with each other. They tease each other in a very loving way. They're very physically affectionate with each other. Every time I'm at their home, he says something to the effect of, I love Mandy, or I care about Mandy, or I care about you. Or if I bring candy or treats, he'll instantly ask if she wants to share them, or he'll ask if I'll bring her favorite next time. She likes peanut butter cups. And so he is very obviously bonded to his caregiver in a parental role that I have seen deepen over the course of the case.
And during the period of case, has this cell been able to provide the kiddo with any material needs or any financial support?
Not consistently. I do know that there have been, I can think of a couple of instances where she has had visitations at the caregiver's home where she has brought groceries. I know on one instance, she brought food and cooked a meal for him at the caregiver's home. And she has provided gifts to him on a few occasions. Yes, but no consistent clothing support or shoe support or school supply support or anything like that.
And at the child's current home with a caregiver, does he have like his own bedroom?
He shares a bedroom with his oldest half brother. He does have a designated space in the basement that has been turned into his playroom, where he has his gaming system, his arts and crafts supplies, a table and chairs, a child-sized sofa. It's outfitted for him because his teenage brothers do have space where they don't always allow him into because they are teenagers. He's 6. And so he does have his own dedicated space in the basement, which I view, and is filled with things for him. He loves to do arts and crafts and build things with paper and glue and tape and scissors, and he has all of those types of things.
As far as policy goes, is this considered a relative placement?
Yes.
Generally, relative placements weigh against terminating parental rights. Can you explain why it would still be in the child's best interest to move towards adoption despite this being considered a relative placement?
Yes, so the child's father has voluntarily released his parental rights to the child, so he no longer has a legal father. He is young. He is 6 years old. He's observed that he enjoys the family feeling within his current placement. It is not it does not feel like when you're there as a visitor, as Ms. Heiss stated, nor to credence or to CY when you observe him, it does not feel like a temporary stop. This is his home. These are his people. These are his brothers. And this is his caregiver. He has been observed to refer to his caregiver as mom when talking to his friends and neighbors and peers. He does not call her mom. He calls her, he has a very familiar nickname that he uses for her, but he does not call her mother or mom when he talks to her. But when he talks about her to his schoolmates, he's been observed to say, that's my mom, or my mom dropped me off or is picking me up. This is not a temporary stop for him. He feels very at home in this placement, and the home kind of revolves around him, to be honest. They very much like to make sure that he is happy and his needs are met. He is only 6. He would thrive in a state of permanence that he knows will not be undone at any given moment and cause him instability or anxiety. The caregiver is very interested in providing permanence through adoption so that she can be his legal parent and he can have a legal parent who he could be an heir to. He will have full legal brothers residing with him. Everyone in the family is on board with this being an adoption, including his father who released his parental rights. He's ready for permanency.
This caregiver has, from your reports and testimony that we've had throughout this case, has been really kind in allowing mom to sort of maybe dictate when she has contact and all of that. And with that, do you believe that mom has taken advantage of that openness?
I mean, mom has utilized that and does speak to the caregiver through social media and through phone regularly. Has she taken advantage of it to the extent that it's been available? No, because she's been able to, the caregiver has been told from the outset that at minimum, the child should be having 2 times per week visitation with mom. And mom knows that, and the caregiver agreed to that. And that has, and it's a less than 25% success rate in a 2 times per week visitations draft case. So mother does access caregiver easily to request to talk to the child or to request to set up visits, but it just doesn't happen very often on mother's part. This was also alluded to earlier, but mother does have a tendency or has in the past reached out to the caregiver, not only to speak to the child and to see the child, but to also get emotional support from the caregiver and to ask for financial help from the caregiver. She has asked for money on more than one occasion from the caregiver.
Does the caregiver have the financial ability to support all of these individuals without a subsidy or income from an outside source?
And no, the caregiver depends on the foster care payments that she receives for the child to meet his needs.
Thank you. I have no further questions of Ms. Conrad. I move to admit the court report.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Unfortunately, I just reviewed it all to make sure I had it right. We've had, I think 4 different adjournments. So I have 4 court reports. Thank you, Ms. Conrad, very thorough. The first is from services that went from October to December 6th. I have another one that went from after the last court date, the 12/13 through the anticipated date of January 9th. I have another one that looks to replace both of these with a services date from October through the end of January. And then I have, of course, today's, which goes from January to March. So I guess I'm looking for clarification on which one, how many, all of them you'd like me to receive.
Your Honor, those have been circulated and served appropriately. I don't know that I've taken any testimony on the earlier ones given the adjournments, and I believe that some of them were provided because of dad's dates. So I don't know that we've ever have had testimony on them. But as it relates to these, if I could have a brief recess to sort of review what I have and compare them, that might be helpful in determining what we need to get into the record.
Any objection?
None. No.
All right.